Welcome to Inside the Innovation Studio, take two. And first, I'm going to introduce Nico Brugge, in a little more depth, but I just wanted to first kind of frame up what we're trying to do with month one of Inside the Innovation Studio, which is meant to be a makerspace. We want to introduce, what we're going to do is in the first set of interviews, we will just talk with outside innovators. And then once a month, we're going to do a version of this where we just kind of workshop and put everybody's individual business inside the innovation studio. And we kind of workshop it together so that we've got an ability to kind of take a look back at what we've learned and put it to good use. This month is focused on Web3. We did AI last week with Joe Papa. We're going to do my former partner, Jamie Bauer, who's got a TED Talk on resonance as a key metric. I think resonance is the kind of the key metric of Web3. Does it resonate with humans? Does it actually go a little bit deeper? Is there social responsibility? Is it authenticated, et cetera? I think Jamie has a unique perspective on that. And as our middle play here, we've got Nico Brugge, who I worked with originally when we were in the VR space. We did immersive media, a VR AR studio. We did a fabulous work with Bank of America, Jaunt VR, Samsung. Nico went on to get even deeper into Web3 as he's now a senior executive producer at Real Vision. He has been there for 5 years. 4 years.
Almost 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been there for a while. And so I think Nico, you actually, particularly something special about Web3 since you've been all around it. What is it? What is Web3?
Well, I think broadly speaking, the way to define Web3 is that it's the next evolution of the internet in which users control their own data. And you don't necessarily need the mediators of Facebook, Instagram, social media platforms to necessarily connect with your users. It also is a lot of ways about, to me, building community via blockchain technology, I think is really at the heart of it. So at Real Vision, some of our content is token gated. You can only access it by connecting your Web3 wallet to this website and proving that you have a certain type of NFT that we've released that will only allow you to get this type of content. No one else will be able to view it. So, it's hard to define exactly what it is in this moment because I feel like we're in inning 3. We still got 6 innings to go. We're not even at the 7th inning stretch. So, but regardless, it's an incredibly exciting time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think especially with AI coming in, there was the metaverse has maybe taken a back seat to AI in the last year or so. It's certainly, I think, crypto kind of took a hit. What was it, November, when Sam Bankman-Fried was brought up on charges of massive fraud?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that you could actually say it started in technically May 1st when Luna and their stable coin, their algorithmic stable coin depegged, because what we've discovered since the FTX collapse is that FTX was basically fucked from that moment. And basically, sooner or later they were going to get caught. It just happened to be in, October, November of last year. But yeah, it wiped a ton of players out of the space.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people, that's why I say, where is crypto today? I've got a lot of questions for you. You are a storyteller, you are an innovator, you have quite a lot of different things. But maybe the burning question in everybody's mind is what's going on with crypto today? Is it going to stick around? Is it here to stay? You guys just raised $35 million to build a Web3 platform. So I gather you're
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was a year or two ago that we raised that money for what it's worth.
Yep, fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, we like to say here at Real Vision, and obviously this comes from the top down from Raul Pal, that we're in crypto spring. We have seen through crypto winter, and we're starting to thaw out. I think the biggest two issues for crypto right now is the overall macro environment. because crypto, as we have seen, especially Bitcoin, closely follows the macro cycles. And then beyond that, more specifically for those of us here in the US, is what is this US regulation going to be? Are they going to finally get their shit together and come up with proper guidelines, because they're out there suing Coinbase for selling unregistered securities, even though they worked with the SEC to IPO, within the last couple of years. So there's a ton of confusion there. But at the end of the day, if you look at crypto, even after this weekend where we had a bit of a pullback, we're still up year to date, all things considered, from where we were back in January. I remember we were doing on Real Vision, we have a show called Crypto Distillery, where we break down everything we learned that month with our pro crypto community members. And I think it was the episode at the end of January, two of our pro crypto members mentioned that Bitcoin had only ever traded between 25 and 30,000 for like less than a day. Like when we ripped up in 2021, 25 to 30 was like, basically we just blew right past it. The minute I heard that, I was like, okay, we're going to be sitting around in 25 to 30,000 for quite a while. So, none of this is obviously investment advice, but, being boots on the ground, we feel that, the major players have sort of took this time to continue to build the really great products. We're going to see the fruit of those labors over the coming years and months. But nobody's, saying that it's dead. We're still chugging along.
I'm interested in the distinction between the financial vehicle and the technology. So crypto, the exchanges, et cetera, that's the part where I'm still putting like personally a TBD on it. I was there early in VR. I was there early in everything. So I'm just going to take a moment on the financial vehicle front. But as a technology, the blockchain technology, you talk about token gated content for your subscription. And Felix was like, yes, we should be, looking into that. Why? What's the distinction between the financial vehicle of crypto and the technology of blockchain? What should we be looking at as, business leaders, business owners, as the next wave, what we should embrace when it comes to the blockchain, technology?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when you're talking about blockchain technology, irrespective of cryptocurrencies, you're really talking about an incredibly brilliant advancement in technology that has all sorts of use cases for everyday businesses. I mean, I think one of the major ones that we talk a lot about is art and the provenance in art. If Christie's and Sotheby's put all of their records on the blockchain, there would be no question of provenance at any given point. It's automatically inscribed on the blockchain. Nobody can change those records. And you would never have to worry about digging out, that letter of authenticity saying that desk is actually the desk of Charles Dickens or something. It would just be there on the blockchain. Beyond that, and there's a ton of other use cases in terms of the technology and smart contracts, which are basically coded contracts that allow for a decentralized exchange. You don't need humans. The contracts just follow what they need to do, and they execute it every single time. I mean, to go back, that is something to note about all of the crypto collapses we saw last year, is that all of the collapses were either centralized exchanges, not actually decentralized, as in humans were still moving the levers and not just letting smart contracts run everything, or shops that went crazy high in leverage. Which, as Raul always says, leverage, I forget the exact quote, but basically it's like a poor man's game. It's like there's never, ever play with leverage in this world, especially on a volatile asset like crypto, which you should just routinely expect 80% drawbacks. But, to your point, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we are too alike, man.
Yes, exactly. Go.
We should have exchanged notes on the wardrobe too. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of the tokenization element, what blockchain technology ultimately allows, and this is ultimately tied up a bit with cryptocurrency, is that you could create a Kaizen token, and everybody could get it for free for the first 100 people. And basically, it could be a token. If you have more of the tokens, you unlock certain rewards, sort of like a Patreon system, but instead of being tied to paying more, it's tied to tokens and all of that. And look, let's say, you've gotten everything you wanted out of Kaizen. And I don't think that's the case. We're always learning and always educating ourselves. You could then go and sell those tokens to someone else who wanted to join the community and level up. I mean, another thing, Chris, is I'm sure your kids, or I don't know, but, let's say, do they play Fortnite? What video games are your kids playing?
I have a 16-year-old daughter who didn't get into the video game piece, and then I have a 10-year-old son who's still on FIFA. So he hasn't really made the jump to the multiplayer shoot-ups.
So here's very good. FIFA's the best. I've lost tons of hours to FIFA in college, and there's a reason I don't own video games anymore. But FIFA's a great example. Every year FIFA comes out with a new thing, and you're not able to port over all of your rewards previously. Well, if those were NFTs, and EA Sports, the company behind FIFA, utilized blockchain technology, your son wouldn't have to start from scratch every time FIFA came out. If he had unlocked that special Cristiano Ronaldo card from, FIFA 2023, when FIFA 2024 comes out, he still owns that, And, to look at it from like the Fortnite side, is like all those skins people pay money on, they should be able to sell those on a secondary market. I mean, one of my favorite stories from being in crypto is this guy, Robert Breedlove, who's really into Bitcoin. He's a libertarian, looks at Bitcoin as financial freedom. But he told me that his aha moment was he realized it was in a certain way exactly what he did when he was a kid. So he played this game called Diablo as a kid. And Diablo is one of those role-playing games where you level up your characters. So what he would do is he would play it for hours on end, level up the character to the highest, which I think was 80 points, and then sell it to another player. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Now, if you could do this on the blockchain, you'd have a forever record of who the player was that actually leveled up. So you could say, oh, this person just bought this, just to come in here at a high level. So, I mean, I think the options are endless, and it's really a question of what is the use case you're trying to solve.
Well, that's interesting because I think, can we bring it down to small business or scale up business? We got startups and scale up leaders, some enterprise leaders, in the academy. And and of course there's Princeton Kaizen, and I'm kind of intrigued by this idea of, okay, I create a token. Now this is the subscription model, and tell me how you might adapt it to a blockchain token gating model. So you have the community, right? You're creating a community. It's free. Everybody can come in and sort of like kind of check things out a little bit. But that's the Harvard Business Review, 8 strategies of group decision making. That's the free content. It's meant to sort of build a knowledge base. Then the next step up is for us, it's the Edison program. It's doing some live teaching. It's doing interviews like this. It's mostly focusing on these kind of biz fix-it sessions that we're going to be rolling out, plus what we're calling systems of growth. And then the next stage up is, you want to get into a personal coaching plan, group coaching solution. How would a token focus model improve that sort of from a structural standpoint? I guess that's, maybe I'm just from a business development perspective, but it is something where I'm trying to understand and wrap my head. Why would a small business owner want to jump into this, kind of earlier than most?
Community building. I think that's really what it is. What you see with these tokens is that it creates a real sense of community around people. And it creates a one-on-one relationship between the business and the community. Because when you release these tokens, you're promising certain things to the community, what we like to call roadmaps in the NFT world. And especially like if you go into these discords for these NFT communities, these token communities, it's absolutely remarkable the friendships you see being made in real time in there. And what we have found is the ethos of Web3 is community, and it is everybody working together for a shared vision. And that could be something as simple as like you're a Taylor Swift fan and you want to see Taylor Swift just keep kicking ass and taking names. She could release a token and, cut out her album or her record label to a certain degree. She could just sell it as an NFT direct to her fans and, release certain upsells along with it. You buy the special edition, you get a special type of NFT. But what we've really seen is this element of community and bridging people across the world around a shared message, whether that be, around art or around particular types of value systems or around, political ideologies.
Well, Felix is he's actually a character off stage here. Felix, the producer, he asked this question: could you peg the Princeton Kaizen token to the dollar? And I do bring this up because his first concern would be the value of the Princeton Kaizen token tanking. And it's true. Like if you're putting money or you're acquiring services, and how do you maintain the value of this thing in in this particular marketplace where it's still fairly new? Is it like when you say non-fungible, it means you can't.
Well, non-fungible is that it doesn't change. It's immutably recorded on the blockchain. You can't change any of the metadata. You can't change the contract it's based on. But at the end of the day, these token communities are like any other economy. They're not pegged to the dollar. Most of cryptocurrency, especially when it comes to tokenization, is priced primarily in Ethereum, a little bit in Solana, Sol. Sorry, what was the question again?
I just like, can you peg it to the dollar? Could you how do you keep the value intact in an uncertain
Well, you keep the value intact by growing the community and delivering on the promises you made. But it functions like any other economy, where, it might be each token is worth 25 cents. But, if you own enough of them, that's great. In terms of, the actual economics of it, you're dealing with supply and demand like any other economy. But pegging it to the dollar is much more of a stable coin type of thing. So stable coins, for anyone who may not know, are looked at as the on and off ramps to fiat. So basically what you do is you buy, this was definitely the case back in the day, but you buy a stable coin, US Tether or USDT, US Digital Tether, or USDC, which is US Digital Coin. And those, the idea is for it always to be pegged to the dollar, because that way you always have a sense of the true value in terms of fiat. Because if we look at Ethereum or Bitcoin right now, the price is changing minute to minute, second to second.
Well, that's I think that's a good segue into maybe a better introduction of you. I think you have helped to certainly turn Raul Pal into like a daily influencer. You are a producer, and you certainly took Zoom to a whole new level. I think Real Vision was way out in front when the pandemic hit, partly because Raul Pal has the beautiful, Cayman Islands setting in the back of his Zoom background, but he had a billiard table in there, and I was just like, wow, these guys are really putting a lot into this from a production value standpoint.
Well, I will say, all credit to Raul. I just like to think I keep the trains on time for him. I have no relationship to his success except, producing his show Adventures in Crypto, which is free on Real Vision every Friday. Highly recommend checking it out. He talks with the biggest names in crypto, like the biggest. We even had Sam Bankman-Fried on until we all discovered he was a fraud. So definitely check that out. But yeah,
Did
I
you guys
mean,
have you suppressed those videos at this point, or they're just a part of
no,
it?
no, just like it's Raul wears it all on his sleeve. Like we. That's the thing about trading that I've learned is you're going to get it wrong, and the people who survive, especially in sort of the quote unquote influencer space, are those that are genuine about it. And Raul is always the first to admit when he's wrong, which is a lovely thing to work with. I mean, look, I'll say this about Raul. There's a reason I've been at the company for almost 5 years, whereas every other company I maybe would last for 18 months. He's a great guy. But yeah, I mean, that transition was insane. Basically, within a week, we were all working from home. And it was a lot of sort of nuts and bolts production of sending DSLRs down to Raul and the Cayman. Also all credit to Raul and his interior designer. That is actually Raul's living room with the billiard table and Little Cayman. If you're a fan of the show, the room with the barber's chair is his office in Grand Cayman. He just has great taste, so that makes it very easy for us production design wise. But yeah, I mean, that was crazy. I mean, we were literally looking into like getting a satellite truck outside of Rao's office. And we discovered ultimately that we could do it much more effectively and cheaply on, Zoom, Skype, Teams, those type of things. And then there was a discussion that Raul and I had when, the pandemic started to recede and we were able to start going back into the office about, do we now go back to recording in person for his show? And Raul was like, no, this is Metaverse point 5. And we're talking about the metaverse and blockchain and crypto and AI. So it only makes sense. Let's keep doing it in the quote unquote metaverse. I mean, Chris, I know you'll want to talk more about this, but this is the metaverse to a certain degree. You and I are in a virtual room together, even though we're in separate cities, hundreds of miles apart. And we're able to have a conversation that people are tuning in from all over the world for. I mean, that is in many ways the metaverse. Now, it's not like, oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I would agree because, I think Meta, the former Facebook, and Zuckerberg, when they came out with the name change and their big tech, and they were going to do an Apollo program and spend more money on, putting a headset on everybody, and then the Facebook kind of tanked last year, and I don't know what has become of that from a driving force. I think they've kind of tacked more into AI at this point, but it was always to me like there is no like Web3 as a philosophy was basically saying the next version of the internet is going to be more intelligent, it's going to be more immersive, and it's going to be better authenticated. And ultimately those three things together are going to make it more authentic, and it's going to be more socially responsible, and we will see if that happens. Part of our philosophy at Princeton Kaizen is that value centric design, putting your values up front is sort of the new cost of doing business in the social marketplace. You can't just inspire people with a look. You have to transform their lives, and that's just marketing, right? But it is a part of the ethos, I think, of Web3 is that this is a new era, that we can kind of get rid of the old forms of distribution, and now it's just you and me and a group of members of our academy kind of talking about these very particular ideas, and we've got a room, and we can build around that a series of rooms, and that becomes our own universe. And maybe it's meta, maybe it's not, but that seems to me the idea that where you're going, and you guys are building a Web3 platform specifically. I know you're, disrupting financial journalism and all sorts of other marketing ideas, but you're effectively building a Web3 platform. So what does that actually mean?
Well, it means utilizing all of these elements that we've been speaking about. I mean, if you want, there's a great video that Raul released at the end of May that I recommend everybody check out, outlining what we're calling RV 2.0, which is this new version of the site we're launching over the course of this summer. And we're going into it full Web3. So That involves being able to token gate content ourselves rather than using third parties necessarily. It also involves using AI to better serve each individual and their wants and needs. So when you go to the platform, but by the time it's fully launched at the end of August, everyone will see a different home page that is tailored through AI to their wants and needs. So moving up certain videos that we have, through our algorithm, have realized they'd rather watch, and suppressing others. Very much in. Oh, go ahead.
I find that actually fascinating because I look at it from the big picture of the marketplace. You know, so many platforms are trying to figure out how do we act more like a publisher. Twitter being obviously top of mind. You've got to keep your advertisers happy. You've got to build a subscription base. You've got to, do all the things that a publisher has to do, which is make good content, build community, build engagement around that. You're looking at it from a different perspective, and you just raised a fairly significant sum of money to effectively be a publisher who can act more like a platform, and create these sort of custom experiences for all of the customers to Real Vision, all of that. I find that actually kind of a fascinating turn, and I wonder if that isn't kind of directionally like where we're heading, in the Web3 era, where you're going to see a lot of little nodes of expertise, and you guys are the crypto and modern finance metaverse, and maybe we can become the innovation metaverse. And, that maybe is sort of what
I would use the word community over metaverse personally.
Yeah, I would too. I wouldn't use that outside of this particular discussion, but because, well, maybe you could, I see it. Yeah, sorry. It's easier to have you straight ahead of me so I can look that way instead of looking off to the side. So that, I guess that's the key question, is really what do you see, once you guys launch, what is the next? I mean, $35 million is a lot of cheddar. And you guys have a very low cost. And I guess I'm just getting deep into the weeds here, and you can tell me like this is stuff I can't talk about. But you have a very low cost production model. It's all Zoom based platform, and that, it seems to me like you are making a statement that we are coming to build a real platform and something that has its own value beyond what you cover as a journalism organization. You're a financial publisher. You make content on crypto and other areas in that particular space. You provide educational content. And now you're coming out with a fairly significant piece of infrastructure, like your physical plant has got to be fairly large at this point. So what do you sort of see where do you see that heading, just in terms of the Web3 platform that you're building?
I mean, a good way to think about it, and the way that Raul has talked about it publicly, is we want to create the new financial hub to live your financial life, whether it's education, whether it's trading, whether it's, technical analysis and looking at charts and stuff. We want to be the one-stop hub for all of that. I'm sure if people have worked in finance, they will know that that's basically the Bloomberg terminal. We're not trying to replace that. We're trying to replicate that for the average person in terms of, everybody I know with a Bloomberg terminal, it's basically their social media and their hub for all things finance. At Real Vision, we want to bring that ability to the everyday investor. And so you're going to see a lot of fun tools appearing on this new platform, including the ability to use charts, the ability to take notes while watching videos, all sorts of things so that, you can basically live your entire financial life just on the Real Vision website in one way or another. I mean, I find it I am so excited about this. And I don't just say that because I work for Real Vision. I say that as someone who has only gotten a financial education because they work at Real Vision. I mean, Chris, you know this. I have never taken an econ class. I stopped taking math in 10th grade because I went to a cool school that was like, oh, you're a humanities kid? We're done with math and science then.
Yeah.
So I used to thumb my nose as a liberal socialist at econ and the economy. And what I learned at Real Vision is that that's just being a bad citizen, and this has effects on everything. in ways we don't necessarily understand. So even if you're not an everyday trader, these type of conversations we have are invaluable.
Yeah, well, this would be a good time to say, Felix, you can hit the post your questions. We've got a little scroll that comes across the bottom of the screen here.
I feel you, man. I know how this goes.
Yeah, well,
usually I'm in your chair.
We can definitely get you to give us some pointers on how to tighten up the.
Oh no! I think it looks great, what you guys are doing. If you guys want to get really crazy, you guys can start doing actual live switching. But I love this sort of I'm just a floating head in your room type of thing. I only like live
switching. You're going to have to talk with Felix. He's going to call you.
Yeah, that is absolutely fine. I'm happy to. I will say I like live switching because when I'm on air, I have a return feed that shows me what the audience is seeing. Right. And no disrespect to your audience, but for whatever reason, I feel weird about on Real Vision using my Joule. And so it's great when I'm doing the interview, I can be like, oh, we're on a one shot of the guest. Okay, I can go ahead and, inhale my nicotine like your for the next 5 minutes.
Okay, well, that like you're old school. Well, maybe we ought to give them a little bit more background. Like, so you grew up in the film industry out in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And, when you were saying like when you jumped into Real Vision, you were coming at it as a developer, as a producer, not as anybody with any financial expertise at all. And obviously, your dad was earlier into investing in crypto than you were. Maybe give us a little bit of background.
So before I get into sort of the bit of the life story.
So we can start with this. I think your first real job was Alan Alda's assistant. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, so I grew up in Los Angeles. I like to joke that I had two choices growing up, film or politics. And film is a lot more fun. My father is from the Netherlands and came to the United States in the late 70s to attend the American Film Institute. He then became a producer in the 80s, working for Canon Films, producing films like Breakin' and Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. By the end of the 80s, he had started producing films with Ed Zwick and Michael Mann. My dad's, I think, first really big film was Glory that Ed Zwick directed. He then went on to do Heat, Bullworth, The Insider, Miami Vice. He's now the executive producer for the television show Bosch, if we have any Bosch heads in the audience. Everybody counts or nobody counts. And then on top of that, my grandfather was Alan Pakula, who was the producer for Robert Mulligan, produced To Kill a Mockingbird, and then became a filmmaker himself and directed All the President's Men, Sophie's Choice, The Pelican Brief. So, and then my uncle, Robbie, who was I was incredibly close to as a child, was a special assistant and with a focus on foreign policy for President Clinton in the 90s. So hence the political side of the family. The other uncle, his twin, used to work at the IMF. So yeah, I mean, when my dad showed me Star Wars when I was 7 years old, I realized I couldn't be Han Solo, so I wanted to do whatever just made me feel that way. Realized that was film. My father and my grandfather gave me a crash course in film history. My father would not let me watch bad movies. I was not allowed to rent the new Steven Seagal film on a Friday night. It was Rainer Werner Fassbinder's Beware of the Holy Horror or, Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly fascinating world to grow up in that regard. But what it gave me the strongest thing in, which is my other career as a screenwriter, is storytelling. Because what we're doing, what you do, what Raul does is we're telling a story. And whether that's a story that ultimately educates someone or makes them, have an emotional response, everything is just storytelling at the end of the day. It's all narrative, and it always has been from the time we were in the caves. There's a reason why we all go back to Plato.
I think that is a good segue into kind of one of the things that we're doing. So we want to we have a summit coming up in October called AI Forward, and it's all about AI. We're bringing a bunch of different voices together. on the subject, and one of our gurus, we're launching a podcast with Joe Papa, AI for Business, and we're over-indexing on AI, obviously, like everybody is, right? But I'm curious because one of the things we want to present at this summit is protocols of AI for content. And I do think we're at that point where you have to, kind of think of them as protocols. Like, what is a good use, and as a content creator, because I think basically you're in crypto, you're basically producing financial journalism behind it, but you're a creator, effectively. And so what does that look like in this new metaverse with AI and blockchain enabling it look like for the next 10 years? What does this zeitgeist look like for a creator?
I think that, and I mean, look, it depends on all sorts of things. Obviously, we have the Writers Guild of America striking with the major studios at the moment, with a lot of it being about AI rights for screenwriters and television writers going forward. So who knows how that sort of plays out? But I think in the ideal world, it becomes a tool instead of a replacement for an individual. I don't know how much, I have never used AI for any of my personal writing. One, I don't want it training on my language and then regurgitating that for somebody else down the line. Two, I think that it's incredibly important as an artist who's trying to communicate a narrative that elicits a emotional response, that it comes from a human being who knows what it's like to have loved and to have lost. Now, there are some really interesting, and I'm talking a little bit more from the art side at the moment, but there are some really interesting artists using AI at the moment. There's this poet named Sasha Stiles that we did a little mini doc for our NFT holders, where she has trained an AI not only on her poetry, but on all the poetry of her influences. So like Walt Whitman and Sylvia Plath. And she sends it prompts and it creates poetry for her that she then works on herself. And it's this really, she's trying to get at this really interesting idea of, poetry has always been about a certain set of rules. So why not see how a thing that is built on a set of rules ultimately interprets it? But yeah, I mean, I think for the everyday person, AI is an effective tool in certain ways, but we also have to be really careful. I mean, I remember playing around with it early in the day and was like, summarize this article for me. Because like I didn't have time to read like a 15-page crypto article and wanted to see if it could just get me the information in, 6 bullet points. It did, only for me to discover that it made up some of those bullet points. None of those bullet points existed. I don't know if you saw this, but recently there was a lawyer who asked ChatGPT, and the ChatGPT ended up referencing laws that did not exist and cases that never existed. So
yeah, he's now going to be disbarred.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that transcript between the lawyer and the judge is just a riot act. So I think it's still so early, and that's why it's in the zeitgeist, because anybody can sort of go and look at AI and put their ideal on it. And we really need to see how it actually develops, and also the ways in which government ultimately choose to regulate or not regulate this. Because one of Raul's big theses is that if AI reaches the point a lot of people think and eliminates all these jobs, we're going to have a serious discussion, not just in this country, but globally, about universal basic income. Well, which, as a good liberal, I'm like, let's do it, guys. Like, I would love nothing more than if the government was like, here's $75,000 a year, do whatever you want.
Well, you are a part of the Hollywood elite, just so we know. And so, like,
yeah. But
I totally like. That's obviously that's a conversation that is probably going to happen with greater frequency than we might think. The question down here. Well, let's jump back to this one. There's a question from Facebook on business owners on crypto, but I wanted to just kind of drill down on what you were just saying with AI, because I do think it is a process now of the theses. Like, we have to nail the 49, however many theses Martin Luther nailed on the, church door. But we do have, this is a major thing that we have to contend with. And I think we have to sort of say, at the end of the day, we have to build a human centric business. And, we've got to sort of like, this ties into what I teach from a brand and business design perspective, but you need a hierarchy of values I come back to, but you definitely need to, if you're going to make content with AI, it can be the best collaborator in the world, but if it runs amok, I mean, where do you draw the line? Like, where is it? Because I feel like you have to take that content out of ChatGPT and put it into a doc, or you have to take it out of Midjourney and put it into Photoshop, or you have to take it out of Opus and put it in the hands of Opus Pro and put it in the hands of an editor. That's sort of my perspective. Is when you do that, you get a really great, interesting AI-enabled piece of content. It's just a question of like where that particular line is drawn. I don't know if you have a reaction to that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Because there are, I've done it. I know you've done it in your past as a writer, where you just, have a character say a line that is exactly from some book, and it just works. And, so much of this is gray area. And because there's also questions of who actually owns the content produced by AI, do you own it, or does OpenAI own it? Does, whichever of these text to video or text to images things? I'm very wary of it. And I'm also wary of it from just a human potential of people seem to use it to get past that uncomfortable brainstorming phase. Mm-hmm. And this, that is the most important thing. Being an artist, creating something out of nothing is a very uncomfortable experience. And that is partially why it creates such lasting stuff. But if you remove all of that friction, I think we lose something at the end of the day in a more philosophical sense.
Mm. Well, I look at it from a marketing perspective. We have a law firm, in our member base, and I'm saying, well, you could build a knowledge base on topics in law applicable to your field, et cetera. Make that part of your content marketing strategy. And that would be supercharged you could supercharge it through AI. You could build it very quickly. So from a marketing perspective, there's that, but you still need to have that creator, governor there to make that actually a successful thing. And I think why now is the most critical question that, you have to answer in the marketing sphere. And I don't think that that's something that AI can do.
And it's, again, it's like I said, we're in like the third inning of all of this. There is still so much left of this game to be played. And as we all know, in the third inning of baseball, you might be up 6-0, but at the end, you're down 12-6 or whatever. Right. And I think what it is it behooves us all to educate ourselves on the latest advancements. But to understand that, we're not even at the AOL moment of Internet 1.0. We're not even at pets.com, This is right before Internet Explorer was launched, in my opinion. In terms
You're talking about Web3. Yeah. Well, I think that Web 2 kind of came to an end, or was the social era. And I think 2016 and 2017, 2018, those were the moments where the social era people started to lose a little bit of faith in that. And I think we've had a couple of years for Web3 to figure itself out. So it's getting around time for that moment to happen. Maybe it's the release this fall of your platform. Maybe that's going to do it.
But we'll see. To me, the biggest concern of all of this is AI deepfakes and what the hell happens between now and the next election. Mm-hmm. And can blockchain technology help solve some of this? Because we're going to see videos before we know it of Joe Biden saying something he shouldn't say, which he does a lot, but in this case, it's an AI video. And the Twitter and Facebook will fucking run with it. Nobody will pay attention to the eventual notice that says this is a deep fake. And what blockchain can do, and I don't think we have time to do it, but if you were to inscribe digital identity on the blockchain, you would be able to immediately go, wait, that's not Nico, because that is not connected to his wallet. So this must be an imposter or a deep fake of it.
Wow, that's interesting. So that's where all three of these converge. Well, I think the questions. Whoops. Yeah. We've got a couple of questions here. One, I don't know where this one came from, but how do business owners? Well, because you're a crypto expert, I think people do want to know where they can get it. How do business owners learn to take advantage of crypto? What kind of benefits do you think crypto can offer right now to small, medium business, even the small stuff?
I mean, I think it depends on the type of business you are running. I think that if you're running a business that involves a large amount of inventory, blockchain can be a huge solve for people. One of the biggest liquor companies in Australia now runs its entire inventory system on the blockchain. I think that's absolutely fascinating. In terms of education about this, check out Real Vision. It's entirely free. We do have a paid subscription for Pro Crypto, but if you're just looking for this base level educational stuff, I would absolutely check out our stuff. It's also on YouTube, but otherwise realvision.com. For crypto, all you need to do is sign up with your email, no credit card required. But beyond that, I think, the part of the issue is that we're facing right now is that blockchain is only just now becoming scalable for individual use cases such as small businesses. Before, because of the computing power needed and the technical expertise, it was mostly institutions using it in that way. But I think in the next 6 months, we're going to see a lot of apps that come out that basically make it sort of plug and play for you to use blockchain as you see fit.
Can blockchain do something about the just explosion of fake news? I mean, I know you were talking about authenticating from a deep fake video. This is not really Nico, but it strikes me that one of the biggest challenges that we face culturally is authentication and moderation of content. Like bad actors have, on Facebook or Twitter have been able to build, insurrections and all sorts of things that are sort of built off of these kind of untruths or whatever. Like, I think as in the hands of a propagandist, some of these tools are super dangerous.
But that's the case, I would say, for any type of technology. I think the blockchain has the potential and crypto has the potential to mitigate these issues. I don't think it has the potential to solve any of these issues because what we're dealing with is an inherent flaw as human beings, and that could be a larger discussion, but I think that is more of a moral and philosophical question of what has happened culturally to shared truths and the erosion of that because of social media and Web 2.0. You're never going to be able to stop Tucker Carlson from getting up there and claiming that, Obama is secretly a lizard, which I feel like we're 3 months away from Tucker saying. But blockchain can help mitigate some of this stuff by the sense of provenance and the immutability of being written into smart contracts that cannot be changed by anyone. But, just because, Trump did this all the time. We have all the laws in front of us. You can go look them up. He's like, yeah, that's not illegal. He's like, well, this law says it is. No, it doesn't. It's not what my lawyers tell me. No technology is ever going to be able to solve for that, in my opinion, unless, I don't know, we follow Elon Musk into the Neuralink thing, at which point I think we're just programming people in a way that is dystopic.
Hey, I've got a couple of questions here from Joanna. Joanna, if you want to unmute and join the conversation, can we do that?
Yeah.
She's got a couple questions about what. Okay, so can you get it almost? Oh, Joanna.
Sure. I'll even turn my video on. You're right. It's not going to mitigate people like Trump or Tucker Carlson. But what I'm wondering is, because part of the problem, especially with the globalization of humanity, as well as the digitization of kind of everything, what you end up with is, instead of being right, news organizations have to be first. So if something goes up, I mean, one of my favorite accounts is on TikTok is a Keanu Reeves deepfake account, and they know, everybody knows it's a deepfake account. It's, it's like Keanu brushing his teeth, right? Keanu making breakfast. But if we assume, which I think we should, that AI's brain will absolutely overtake the quickness of the human brain if it's not already there yet. And if we can assume it's not going to also kill us, but if we can assume that it's going to overtake the quickness of the human brain, as soon as these kinds of things go up, is there hope for the fact checking happening by AI before the human gets to it, right? With certain, if people are able to kind of put certain filters up, can we at least get there so that at some point we are a slight bit in front of it, because people believe what they want to believe, but there are people in the middle who might be able to be convinced.
I think that is an amazing point, and I think that I think the issue is, like, yes, the simple answer is yes, it can help with some of that. But to me, again, it comes back to much more of a human issue and a structural issue, especially in journalism, which is this myth of the fucking objective journalist and the myth of objectivity in journalism. Because, not to get on my soapbox, but we see this all the time with the New York Times. They go out there, they talk to some random people about what they think about Trump because they think they have to both sides everything. I am of that mind. You don't both sides a liar. You don't both sides someone like Trump who is ultimately lying out of his ass. You call him out for it. And too many journalists have, and objective journalism has always been a myth, but it made a little bit more sense back in the day when all you had was your local paper and the evening news. But now with social media and everything, we need to get over that. And these journalistic institutions need to shape up and have a reckoning with themselves and their identity, because technology can only solve so much of this.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that you have, like, the social era pretty much wiped out a generation of editors and publishers at the local level, at the independent level. They don't exist anymore. And you've got like the big media behemoths, and then you have social media. And what's interesting to me is what you're talking about with Real Vision is starting to create like a publisher who's building a platform. You're, instead of being a platform trying to act like a publisher, which is Twitter, which is YouTube, which is Facebook, whatever, you are a publisher trying to act more like a platform. So is the next wave of content, going to be about that, creating these more trusted voices? Like, I don't know, that's kind of an interesting dynamic, but I got to believe that's a part of the Real Vision pitch is, what are the values of this company? What are you guys trying to do to move humanity forward? It's
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, at Real Vision, the original ethos, which is still our ethos, is we want to democratize financial education and news, so that people know what the fuck is going on. And Raul founded the company after the European banking crisis during the great global recession, because he saw all of his friends with no financial knowledge being absolutely screwed by European countries taking over banks and not making depositors whole. And, Chris, this goes back to COVID and being able to pivot so quickly. We were able to pivot so quickly because Raul was having conversations with the production team and the entire company in the middle of February, being like, I think in 4 weeks, we will not be allowed in the office.
so he was obviously, he'd been read into the
Well, as someone who has dealt with the global macro economy, he is someone who is deeply tied into, people in Asia and markets who are like, yo, this is much worse than you guys think it is, and that type of stuff.
I think what is super interesting, and I obviously am buying into it, with what we're doing at Princeton Kaizen, is this idea that the metaverse is this experience right here, and that it's your experience that you're creating on Real Vision, and that's a number of kind of related kind of communities. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
guess I'm
all
coming
about
back.
community.
Yeah, and Joanna has another question. But when we talk about democratizing, we have to include marginalized groups. Is Real Vision able to be digested that way? Well, that's a very good question.
Well, there's
So
a reason why Real
well,
Vision.
let me can I just back up one?
Yeah.
So you guys raised $35 million from your members. So your members are like family offices. I mean, that's a lot of cheddar. So you've got family offices. I'm assuming you've got a pretty good, swath of traders in the mix.
Accredited investors, individual accredited investors.
So you guys have like a list of the A1, thousands of A1 investors are sort of your subscribers. Now, answer the question about democratization.
Well, I think the first and foremost thing is the reason, Real Vision crypto is free. Yeah, like if you want to go further down the rabbit hole and you're day trading, sign up for Pro Crypto, But Raul was very much like, this needs to be free because we need people to have this access no matter where in the world they are and how much money they do or do not have. And so that, I think, is first and foremost representative of that, democratizing financial news and analysis for people. Beyond from that is, the type of stories and individuals we cover and interview. I was just on a call today with a guy who is built a blockchain company in Africa and is just doing absolutely amazing stuff down there. So it's not like the thing to keep in mind is that for every Sam Bankman-Fried out there, these people everybody heard about and then becomes a fraud, there are 100 guys and women grinding, building products that you haven't heard of, but are making actual differences already in day-to-day people's lives, especially the unbanked. That is a huge part of the crypto ethos and therefore Real Vision's ethos as well.
Well, I think Joanna has a follow-up.
Yes, please.
Well, I mean, what I was actually going to say is, part of when we talk about democratization, so if we talk about VC funding, right, for example, in marginalized countries, let's say marginalized countries, a lot of times these small mini companies have to actually even build their own infrastructure, right? We take for granted the fact that in the US, the infrastructure is here. The pipe is laid, the laptops exist, et cetera, et cetera. When you talk about, it's a book, it's called Out something, I can't remember, but by a guy who does micro funding. So for example, in Africa, like you can get your Amazon package to a certain point, but then it becomes, you have to go 2 houses down from the red house. You have to make a right at the farm and then go left where the dog is barking. And those are like legitimate directions that people are giving, right? So there's no infrastructure there. So that's part of what I'm wondering is when we come to democratization and we're talking about marginalized countries that don't have the infrastructure, what is, and I don't think it's necessarily your job, right? But how do we then help get the infrastructure there so that it is truly democratized, right? It is truly something that everybody has access to. Because if you don't have access to the DSL pipe or the, whatever it is, fiber pipe, you don't have it.
Absolutely. So like so many things in these, I hate the term underdeveloped, but these infrastructure lacking things, is the idea that while they may not have DSL, they have cell phones. And the smartphone has revolutionized things just incredibly. These people aren't buying crypto or exchanging crypto via their computer. They're doing it all on their cell phone. But what some of these companies are trying to do is create a bridge between investors. Because, I mean, again, this guy I was talking to about, he's like, I know a guy in Nigeria who wants to start a chicken farm. It'll cost $5,000 and he will make profits by the end of the year should be 15,000. Why can't we connect that guy with some crypto VC to send him, $5,000 worth of Bitcoin, avoiding all of the fiat rails, avoiding wire transfer fees and all of that. And then the guy gets a percentage of, the profit from this chicken farm. And then the more you do that, the more you're enriching these rural areas to create the infrastructure necessary for the desktops to come in. I mean, I was blown away. This guy was telling me he's Nigerian, but partially grew up in the States and goes back and forth. He was telling me that Nigeria's entire electrical output is the size of Columbus, Ohio. So there is a ton of work to do there. But the more that you're empowering people on the ground, the rest of that will follow over time. At least that's the philosophy I've come to subscribe to in those type of situations.
Well, it's just starting to get interesting here, and we're at 1:05. If you guys need to jump off, go ahead. I do want to follow up on this a little bit because we have, I think, in both Nico and Bruna, two international. They kind of fit your model to a certain extent. Bruna's got a coffee production operation in Brazil. And I'm curious, like, what you could do to, start to, like, where could we see blockchain and Web3 taking this new global capability? Like, we now have the ability to bring people directly to bring a bag of coffee beans straight to your door from the farm to table. That's Bruna's my pet project. But I am kind of curious where that can all lead in the future. I mean, do you see where and what part of that does Real Vision want to lead?
Well, Real Vision is, we are not trying to lead any of the infrastructure or those type of things ourselves. We're just reporting and covering that. We're trying to build a community of financially curious people from the layman to the expert. But in terms of sort of the broader picture, what you're ultimately dealing with is the frictionlessness of all of this. One of our friends at Real Vision is this guy named Sergio Silva. He's one of the biggest NFT collectors in the space, and he's from Mexico. And his mom is a school teacher in Mexico. And so when his mom needs supplies because she can't get it from the local government, he just in 3 taps sends her some Bitcoin. She moves it into USDC, cashes it out into her bank account. No waiting for a 3-day wire transfer, no getting hit with a transfer fee, none of that. All of a sudden, this individual, and let's say they didn't even have a bank account. All you need to do is just sign up for a crypto wallet. No need to go to... Yeah.
Bruna, I saw is now live here. Do you want to chime in? Are you on mute? Oh.
Hi.
Oh, there you
go. Hey. Thanks, Chris. I was just wondering, how can blockchain help us, like you said, with ground transportation and air transportation? How do I get my coffee from Brazil, from south of Minas Gerais, southern state of Brazil, to the United States with the help of something like blockchain?
I think the issue is that you would need the companies who are doing that transportation to adopt this technology. I don't know if you could do it yourself. I think you would need, the freight company to be running all of its inventory and scheduling on a blockchain with smart contracts and AI. I think that the more those companies like FedEx move to blockchain technology with some AI, that could solve some of these issues we have where humans are trying to process this vast amount of information and are using legacy systems that are not as smart as what we are capable of doing now, or what tech is capable of doing now. I mean, I hate to say this, but it's, because I wish I could say, well, here's a blockchain app, just enter your information and it would all work. And I do think we will get there. And I don't think we're that far off. But what first is, because we have to deal with legacy players, is those legacy players of these transportation companies need to get in line first.
It seems like for Bruna, you might want to think about a token model or something, because you guys kind of need to raise an army. You need to, I think you've got a great product. You need to, focus in on kind of marketing and messaging and all the stuff we were talking about last week. And is there a fundraising kind of tool that you can use blockchain around? I mean, like, once you've sort of established this community, could you get a number of people to say, like, oh my God, I must have farm to cup coffee. I must support the grower. I think it is the fourth wave of coffee. Like, this is, going direct to the farmer. Can you make that message, and can you use that, and could you build a vehicle, a finance vehicle or something?
Absolutely. The only tokenized communities that succeed are communities that are genuine in their intent and are just using the tokenization model to achieve their goals. It is not just being in and of itself. So here's a really interesting one, Chris, that I think you'll find fascinating. There's this independent filmmaker named Dan Sickles. He made this great documentary a couple years ago. I think it was called Mora or something. That is the life of an autistic woman living in Philadelphia, I believe, and her relationship with her autistic boyfriend, who's a Walmart greeter, or she is. Dan got caught by the crypto and Web3 rabbit hole. And so he decided he wanted to make the definitive documentary, which he's working on at the moment, about this moment in time in Web3. And the way he did it was he created a token, told everybody, you buy this will fund this documentary, and here are all the perks you'll get for the various amount of tokens you own. Mm-hmm. So he has self-funded an entire documentary with the community he knows will watch it, and have basically prepaid to watch it. And that creates this amazing flywheel effect. So if you go into that Discord and you own the tokens, I think it's like every other week or once a month, he will show you what they're editing at that moment. And you get this inside thing that just reinforces this sense of community, so that it becomes about the community and the token is just an engine for it, if that makes sense.
Well, I find it fascinating, and I think, Bruna, we can spend some time. I don't know if you caught this, but I think what we want to do with Inside the Innovation Studio is 3 times a month, we're going to bring in somebody from the outside world, ask them questions, and see if they can help us with our own businesses. And then once a month, we're just going to do hey, let's, spend 15 minutes on Bruna's business and seeing if we can, help to accelerate that, and, kind of taking out some of the stuff that we've learned. So I do want to follow up further with all this, but Nico, we've taken up too much of your time at this point. I will say that the book that Joanna was referring to is called Out Innovate by Alex Lazaro. And hey, man, we didn't even get to talk about our big Western TV show. Man.
I know all of we'll do it next time. I'm happy to come back whenever you'd like. And this was a real pleasure. And I hope my answers weren't too annoying and actually helpful.
The documentary. Felix says, what was the name of the documentary you were talking about?
Let's see. Dan Sickles, Web3 doc. Sorry, I have so much stuff. New Here. Excellent. Yeah. And Dan Sickles, you can follow him on Twitter at Dan_Sickles. SICKLES. All of the info about that doc and his other projects are in his bio. Just a super cool guy. And if you also want, we did a whole interview. Raul interviewed him all about this documentary. You can get a sneak peek at it. It's super cool. Just type into Google Real Vision Dan Sickles and you'll find it.
Cool. Well, this has been fabulous, and I feel like we've got our second strut of Web3 now fully surrounded. Nico, we would obviously we'll have you back here when you guys are launching that that Web3 platform. You can maybe give us
happy to.
Tell us when we can get a sneak peek behind the scenes, because I'm curious, like with what you're doing, both as a field of coverage. I think crypto and finance is super interesting, but also what you're doing as a content creator and a creator enterprise, and building a publisher that can operate like a platform as opposed to a platform that can operate like a publisher. Anyway, that's it for Inside the Innovation Studio. Thank you guys for joining us. We will see you next week, same time, same bat channel. Bye.